Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Gramoglia, and I'm the president and CEO here at Woodland Pond, and this is my weekly address for Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. I wanted to start today with going over some really fantastic things that have been going on from a health center committee and other health center related items, and just bring up a couple of things that have come up on the highlight reel over the last week or so. I'd like to start first by directing everyone or inviting everyone to our Woodland Pond YouTube channel, where we do stream or air basically anything that we videotaped or recorded here on campus. And these include something called the Woodland Pond Council Connections. These are events that happen every few weeks where a member or a designee from the Residence Council interviews sort of the person du jour or the committee du jour. And this past Thursday, the Council Connections was to highlight the efforts of our Woodland Pond resident-run health center committee. And Jill Ortner, who is the current chair of that committee, and Margaret Nyhouse, who's the past chair, were interviewed by Halima Hassan. And the session was really enlightening. And so many questions came up and so many different things were discussed in terms of the role of the health center committee, how it's really broken up into different sections where you've got a focus on different areas of the health center, the priorities of the committee, some of the challenges that they're seeing highlighted and being discussed with management. It was really fantastic. I strongly encourage folks to watch that re-airing if you haven't seen it. Again, you can find that and basically all of our content right there on our Woodland Pond YouTube channel. And I'd like to just thank that committee as well as all of the other committees for all of the great work that you're doing. But this one in particular is doing such an enormous amount of advocacy. They're great liaisons for our residents and our families in the health center. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I hope that you watch and learn something from that video. One of the things that came up among other things, was a question and a reminder or an opportunity for a reminder about how to best help us facilitate the ever-present concern about laundry that happens in the health center. So for those that do know or maybe don't know, we send personal linens out to a laundry service. And in order to make sure that those linens and laundry come back to the right individual in the health center, we have a labeling process that happens here right on campus. So when you move into the health center or if you're there temporarily, what we ask is that your clothing be brought to reception so that the reception staff can create a log of everything that you've given us, and then those can be sent down to laundry to be labeled. And then this way that gives us the most opportunity to be successful in getting clean linens back to you or clean laundry back to you when it's time and they've come back from the laundry company. One of the things that the Council Connections highlighted, and frankly, I hadn't really thought about this, but it makes total sense, is that if you're already living here in the health center and you, let's say, get a gift of a piece of clothing, oftentimes that gift exchange will happen in your room, for example. And that's the kind of opportunity that is a little bit more likely to slip through the cracks because you don't really necessarily think, I have to get this labeled. So this is a reminder that if you are a resident in the health center or a loved one of a resident in the health center, and it is an opportunity for you to provide new clothing or an added clothing item to someone that's already residing in the health center, that you do make sure that those items make it to reception so that they can be labeled. We want you to have what you are expecting and hoping for from the laundry, and your help in this will be absolutely instrumental in us being successful with that. Today, if you had happened to go by the classroom between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m., we had our quarterly Quality Assurance and Performance Improvement, or QAPI, meeting. And if you had looked in the room, you would have seen that you had representatives from the Woodland Pond Board of Directors, residents of the health center committee representatives, staff from every discipline on campus, and in other folks that wanted to join the meeting. And what this program is, it's something that is standard practice among high-performing long-term care facilities. Portions of the program are required because we're participants in the Medicare and Medicaid programs, and there is a responsibility of the Woodland Pond Board to have a level of oversight and input into our quality assurance programming. And so what this is it's a meeting where every quarter, anyone that has a concern about any kind of quality issue or performance improvement opportunity specifically related to the health center can come and voice those concerns, and then the team is responsible for making sure that we are responsive to any concerns that are raised in a very systematic and very measured way. Yes, a 90-minute meeting is a long meeting, and in that meeting, we're going through an enormous amount of detail related to any performance improvement programs that are underway at that given point in time. So it could be something that maybe a new regulation came out, or something from our own, quality review. We aren't meeting our own expectations or our own standards. So we're coming together with data at these meetings, and it's an enormous amount of data. And I'll give you an example. A new regulation came out roughly 6 to 9 months ago, where the treatment of how our team has to care plan for or document the need of a resident to take an anti-anxiety medication now is treated the same way from a regulatory perspective as when we have to give a resident an antipsychotic medication. So antipsychotic medications have always sort of been, on the top list of concerns among regulators. They really don't like to see antipsychotic medications being used in the long-term care setting. And there's always been sort of a high bar in order to be able to justify that someone needs those medications. There has to be a certain amount of sign-off by medical practitioners. There have to be consents signed by families or the resident themselves if they have capacity. Just a lot of hoops to jump through. But that's sort of been the baseline expectation, understanding. There's no permission in New York State to utilize what's called chemical restraints in the long-term care setting. So whereas someone may be having behavioral disturbance or any kind of a psychotic interference, you really have to be able to justify that the medications that you're providing are not there to create what's called a chemical restraint, or basically sort of sedating those people. Now, that same level of scrutiny, that same level of oversight now applies to certain classes of anti-anxiety medications. And so that's an enormous amount. And actually, the numbers today were kind of astounding to me. Our pharmacy representative actually comes to the meetings, and he kind of kicks it off and gives us lots of detail about where Woodland Pond is trending on certain things like this. And of the folks in skilled nursing, currently, or within the last quarter, 48% of our residents in skilled nursing are on an antidepressant medication, and 17.9 or 18% are on an anti-anxiety medication. In both cases, that is at least a 10% greater propensity here at Woodland Pond than it is at state and federal averages. And that was very striking to me. So where we've remained somewhat consistent in terms of those numbers, it is curious that our residents in the health center have such a higher percentage, by 10% or more, in both of those categories related to their peer groups at the state and federal level. So that, combined with the regulation that we have to really make sure that those all of those bars that have to be met are being met, is really important to our quality assurance team. So that's just one of many examples. I actually took 7 pages of notes in the meeting today. When I write things down, they stick in my head, so I like to take lots of notes. But it's really important for you all to understand that we take this responsibility very seriously. You have got, our medical director was there today. The department heads, every department head was there represented. Bridget Blum came in her corporate compliance officer role, and we do take it very seriously. I want to thank the board members for coming and the residents, and we do invite anyone can add something to the CWAPI program. So if you've got anything that you're concerned about related to the health center, you can just put that into any kind of feedback opportunity that we have, whether it be one of the suggestion boxes or drop it a note off with reception, or contact anybody in our team, and we can formalize a review through the CWAPI program. But that is underway, and wanted to make you all aware of that. Let's see, it is hot out. We all know that. And related to that, there's a few things that have come up. Just some friendly reminders, I guess you could say, that in independent living, we will not be permitting our housekeepers to do their work in your home if your thermostat is reading above 75 degrees as the actual temperature, not to where it's set to. So by the time the housekeeping staff arrives, your apartment or cottage home need to be below 75 degrees in order for them to proceed with their housekeeping tasks. This is the consistent practice that we followed for a long time. It's just not appropriate for them to do that kind of physical labor in your home if it's above 75 degrees. And this is something that we can do to protect the staff. So we just want to remind you about that. When it is this hot out, it's really important. Liz Elliott has asked me to remind everyone to be outside very judiciously, remain in the shade, and make sure you're being hydrated. So lots of water, those hydration stations in the pub with today's watermelon and thyme or rosemary, I think, in one, and then I think it was orange or lemon slices in the other. Great way to entice you to stay hydrated. We encourage you to do that, and just to be really careful with being outside on these very hot days. The next thing on this topic, Liz, who is newer to us, had asked the question of, how often do we have power outages, and what kinds of accommodations do we have for residents in independent living, specifically related to power outages. And knock on wood, we are able to say that our experience with power outages has been very few and far between over the last 16 years, and not even anything that has risen to the level of being notable by any means. But this is a good reminder that we do maintain a list at concierge of any resident that requires electricity for life-saving means. So if you need an oxygen concentrator plugged in, or a CPAP machine, or other things that rely on electricity, we need to know that. And in independent living, we rely on you to tell us that. In the higher levels of care, we assume that everyone's going to have some level of need for electricity. The bulk of the health center is on emergency power. Our team is very familiar with what needs to happen. We've got battery backups on certain of the more high-level, complicated equipment that requires a battery backup so that it runs continually, even if the generator does kick on. So just kind of keeping all that in mind. One of the things that Liz has asked me to ask each of you to add to the list, if you are an independent living resident and you utilize a lift style recliner that's plugged into the wall and it helps you stand up by lifting you, please do make sure that concierge is aware of that, and we will add you to the list as well of those that need power for life-saving means. On a similar note, but not exactly related, there is a reminder that if you have any kind of mobility device, your name should be marked somewhere on it very clearly. So oftentimes people will use one of those, complimentary mailing labels that you get from this cause or that cause that has your name and your address on it. Just take off one of those peel stickers and stick it right on your rollator, on your walker. If you use a power mobility device, somewhere on there your name should be listed, because we know that a lot of you use, like a special flower or a string or ribbon or something to identify that it's yours, but we won't necessarily know which ribbon is yours specifically. So we do ask that you label those items, and we can help you with that if you need help. We do have a label maker. Rob has asked that we remind you that complimentary shredding of confidential information is available this week from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. every day in Central Supply, which is on the lower level towards the end of the building near the loading dock. If you have any issues or questions, or you need help with getting your papers transported to Central for the shredding, please call concierge or reception. We will help you with that. Let's go into a couple of calendar items. Today at 2 p.m. in the PAC, the LGBTQIA+ and Allies Resident Interest Group and the Interfaith Committee are co-sponsoring One Summer in New Paltz, which is the airing of Dawn Sangri's SameSex Marriages in New Paltz film and discussion. You're not going to want to miss this one. Everyone is welcome and everyone is encouraged to attend, especially since it's so hot out. It's a perfect day to come and immerse yourself in this topic. It's very Woodland Pond centric, very New Paltz centric, and it's a great time to come and learn about this historic event that happened right here in New Paltz related to marriage equality. Tomorrow is the annual Board of Directors meeting here on campus, so you will see that from morning until late afternoon, all of the members of the Woodland Pond Board will be here. We are going to be in the classroom doing a whole series of seminars and information sessions as the day goes on. We're doing legal updates with not-for-profit governance responsibilities. We're doing updates on the project. We are going to be covering succession planning and a whole bunch of other things. So you will see us sort of hold up in the classroom tomorrow, but that is a very important annual retreat day that we do. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the PAC, we will have 6 students of local music teacher Debbie Galino, and they will be giving a piano recital. There will be refreshments to follow, so I know that that's an enticement for some of you. And we do hope that you come and encourage these young musicians in their musical journey. Thursday from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. in the game room, there will be a drop-in gathering of friends and family to remember our recently passed resident Joyce Zonana, and they would love to see you. We do have a blood drive on Friday in the PAC from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And as you all know, blood and the need for blood product is always in high demand, especially here in the summer months. Generally speaking, residents are eligible to donate blood, and the blood service is always thrilled with the fact that we are able to put up almost a full calendar of blood donation appointments. If you've thought about it, or if this is something that maybe you used to do and you haven't done it in a while, please reach out to Bridget Blum. I think we still have a couple of spots left. We'd love to be able to sell out, so to speak, and be able to have said that we filled up that whole calendar and provided lots of blood product to those in need in the community. Just a couple of notes related to that. Deborah's 10 a.m. yoga class will be in the classroom instead of in the PAC on Friday. Matt's circuit flow class at 11 will also be in the classroom. Simple Melodies at 3 will be in the classroom, and Shalom Space is at 4 p.m. in the Health Center Great Room on Friday. Let's see. One more thing before I move into the rumors and suggestions. A note from dining. This is just sort of a follow-up to something that came up last week. If you have a reservation for dinner and you are late, we will do our best to seat you in that time slot. But it's very important that in an effort not to impede dining or the flow of dining services, that we may have to ask you to wait a few minutes and go in the next seating. We do ask you to be patient with this process. We do understand that things come up, and we are very much committed to making sure that you always have a meal when you schedule to have one, but you may be asked to wait until the next time slot. And if you have questions or issues about that, I would encourage you to see Phil Cavallo, our Director of Dining Services, or Jared Cutts, who is our Assistant Director of Dining Services on that. Okay, suggestions and rumor mill. Last week was a busy one. So in no particular order, the dining room, game room, and TV room in skilled nursing are atrocious. They look like a prison. Since the renovations of the health center aren't slated for another few years, in the meantime, can't paint, molding, hanging pictures, and nice furniture be used to make those spaces look livable? So this is certainly something that falls into the eye of the beholder. I think that we all recognize that a large part of what's contributing to the feeling of how skilled nursing feels in that center area, in that central area, is the fact that the original design did not contemplate for or allow for any natural light. And without a doubt, we all agree that that is very problematic. This is why a substantial amount of the design work that is being slated for the health center is moving rooms around and opening up that entire central area to allow for natural light to come in, as it should have been from the beginning. In the meantime, your outlets for communicating these kinds of things, in addition to bringing it up in the rumor mill and suggestion box, are to go to the health center committee, or to go to the design and decor committee, and or to the resident council meetings in skilled nursing, if you have concerns about that. These are the appropriate ways to get those kind of things kind of clocked. And I can tell you that we would certainly welcome any specific advice. One of the things that we have found over the years is we're in those spaces, we have to balance functionality with aesthetic. And oftentimes we will find that, we know that a paint job is due, whatever the case may be. Our team, based on research in the industry and understanding what kind of colors are soothing, appropriate for a population of folks that are in a long-term care setting, may be very much in conflict with what someone may think aesthetically is the right thing to do. And so there's a lot of opinions on these kinds of things, but we absolutely encourage your feedback, absolutely want your recommendations, and to the extent that we can find solutions that allow for the functionality that we need and the flow of space for the residents that are there, if we can, increase the pleasure to the eye, that's something we're all for. So please do bring those suggestions forth with specifics, and we will absolutely consider anything that's put in front of us. The next, Dave's talks are great, but they are too long. Can they be streamlined to delete all the ums and ahs and the repetition? I will tell you that neither myself nor Dave is a trained broadcaster, nor an actor, and nor did we ever set out to be one of those things when we're giving these addresses. So while we do always have content that we want to cover, in some ways it is a stream of consciousness kind of presentation. We're not using teleprompters. There's things that kind of come up, and I think our normal type of language use is going to come forward in these. We are always thankful for the feedback. It does make us more mindful of that. I can tell you I do it, and I watch back some of these weekly addresses and I cringe with how many space holders I insert into these discussions, but we are trying, and this was delivered to Dave. So I would ask for a little bit of graciousness with him and with myself, and just know that we do try to be mindful of that, but the bulk of what we're trying to do is to convey the messages to you in the most genuine and appropriate way, and ask forgiveness for some of that space filler. One resident in skilled nursing blares Fox fascist propaganda, all in caps, on his TV all day long. How can anyone sleep there with the blaring televisions bleeding out of some of the rooms? The televisions in skilled nursing should be set so that they cannot go over a certain volume. So I can't quite tell from the this rumor or suggestion if the opposition is to the content of the loud television, or if it's the fact that it's a loud television in the first place. But either way, I will tell you that this is something that we deal with in the long-term care settings, particularly in skilled nursing, on a very regular basis. And although, Philip and his crew and our staff have been doing this for a couple of decades at this point, certainly on a combined basis, this is something that's very challenging to deal with. And a large part of the problem is that some of the technology that exists to stream television sound from your TV into hearing aids, for example, or a certain type of headset. A lot of those hearing devices are very challenging for residents to want to accept. So yes, the technology does exist, so you can have it appear that it's silent on the television, but it's sending the sound into a device that you're wearing on your ear or on your head. A lot of our residents just cannot tolerate those items. And so we're always kind of struggling with, how do we allow those residents the autonomy and the agency to be able to watch what they want to watch and be able to hear it, which may necessitate it being very loud, with the peace and the quiet of the residents around them. And there is no easy solution to this. We can't put residents behind closed doors. That's something that the state is very clear about. The resident deserves to have autonomy in terms of having their own door open or not. We certainly would be open to exploring the potential of a policy. And again, I would suggest that if you have a concern about this, this is something really, really perfect to take to the Health Center Committee. I'm not really sure how we would navigate it beyond what we have done. And I will tell you that in most of the conversations that we have had with the residents to ask them to limit their volume in general, just because of it is very noisy and it is disruptive, it's often met with a quite vociferous response of, it's my room, I'm going to do what I want in here. So again, we are open to suggestions. We completely recognize that there is some level of what I'll call noise pollution, and some of that's unavoidable in a setting where you're dealing with folks that have compromised hearing, or for example, someone may have verbal outbursts, totally common in settings where you have long-term care, and particularly cognitive impairment. Not really simple to figure out how to sort of quelch that sound. But yes, I would certainly encourage, especially on the TV issue, for you to bring those forth to the Health Center Committee. Perhaps as a group of residents working with management, we can figure out some solutions here, but it's not a simple one. The next, I apologize because the actual written rumor mill or suggestion comment that came through is not on my desk. I do remember the gist of it though, and I'll kind of go through it. So this is following the touch point that we had in the management Q&A last Wednesday on the forthcoming capital campaign. And this person in particular was responding to some of the specifics that came up in that meeting, questions that were asked. And when we had the management Q&A, there was a question that came up of basically who's going to know who contributes and who is not going to know, and how are they going to know those details and so forth. And, you know, of course, there has to be a point person, because we have appropriate thank yous that need to happen, a donor wall that will be going up. So there will be somebody that needs to know who gave and how much, so that we can do the appropriate recognition and do the accounting for any donations that are made. And standing there in that moment, I was reflecting back on the fact that both with our task force of the board and management that's been dealing with this issue since last summer, and in the consultant conversations that we've had with the hired consultant, that it was deemed to be appropriate not to bring in a third party to do fundraising on this. That felt very cold and inappropriate and not Woodland Pond-like at all. And so the general consensus was sort of, if this is going to be successful, it needs to be someone having these discussions that the residents are familiar with, understand the nuances, the sensitivities, and those kinds of things. And absent someone else, that the person that was tapped for that was me. That being said, I can understand a concern about a potential for a quid pro quo, even though there's no history of that happening here. And so in discussing this with Sally Cross, who is our, as of tomorrow, new board chair, and spent her career doing all kinds of work in the world of development and fundraising, she has indicated that there's a simple solution to any resident that might feel that they do not want it to be known if they contributed. Of course, you would make an anonymous donation. And we can also do this through the community foundations of the Hudson Valley. This is not a fund that has to be maintained at Woodland Pond by any means. So we can work through those nuances and just be appropriately sensitive to any of those kinds of considerations. So we do welcome that feedback. The other question that same person asked was, or concern that person raised was that they felt that, Woodland Pond residents pay a substantial monthly service fee, and that this capital campaign should be on the, I don't want to say on the backs of, but basically that the fundraising effort should happen with private foundations or other philanthropic organizations here in the area or at the state or federal level. And I did touch on this a little bit on Wednesday in the management Q&A, and I will expand on this a bit more in an upcoming seminar that we're going to hold on this. But those opportunities really just don't exist for this project. And that is something consistently that both Sally in her role and the consultant that we hired have told us repeatedly, that this project is not an outward-facing, mission-based project. It's inward-facing in that the benefits of a new PAC would be borne or experienced by the residents primarily. And also that we're not serving a lot of the populations that kind of check the boxes to make projects like this attractive to those kinds of foundations. Now, in order to vet that, I spent the morning, several hours, 4 or 5 hours in the morning on last Thursday or Friday, and really kicked the tires on that just to kind of see, the Dyson Foundation, Novo, some of the National Endowment for the Arts, a lot of the bigger and smaller opportunities at the regional, state, and federal level to look at the qualifications and the criteria that they carry. And I sent just 8 examples with an extensive amount of detail over to the Residents Council and the members of the Woodland Pond Finance Review Committee, because I think it's important for us to substantiate some of the suppositions that might come along. And in 100% of the cases of those cases that we found, it's really clear that this kind of a project, which is very much Woodland Pond resident centric, would not qualify for that kind of funding. Now, that being said, anyone that would like to send over a suggestion about an individual that's philanthropic or an organization that you think that maybe this would be applicable to, please do send those over. But the important thing here is that the capital campaign, should we decide that we're going to go forward with it, and we will know that tomorrow after the board retreat, is simply an acceleration of a project that is already slated to happen starting in 2028. And I think that's kind of some of the messaging that might be getting lost. It's not a matter of if the capital campaign doesn't happen, the new PAC doesn't happen. It's just that project right now, based on our debt capacity, can begin in 2028. It cannot begin in 2025 unless we do a capital campaign. And of course, anything that you do now is less expensive than when you do it in the future. And more importantly, to the extent that we can do any of the aspects of any of our projects through individual or alternate funding sources, and we don't have to borrow for those in the bond market, it inherently becomes much less costly. So I just want to be very clear on that. This project is slated to happen with a 2028 start. Our ability to successfully campaign for our capital on this accelerates the project, brings you the new PAC much, much sooner and much less expensively. So that's kind of where we're going with that. And we'll talk more about that in the coming days. Okay, last 2 things. I enjoy the management Q&As, and I appreciate the information and you moving things along. I recommend that a staff member stand at the back door to ask residents not to sit in the last row and save those for latecomers, and to ask latecomers to sit in the last row rather than to walk in the front of the pack and disturb everyone. I also request that in their talks, Rob, Tom, and other staff members not refer to residents as you guys, since many residents are not guys. And finally, at the start of the meetings, I recommend that you ask residents to refrain from side conversations and to silence their cell phones during the meeting. And thank you. And we agree with all of this. I'm not sure that we will necessarily have somebody manning that last row, but it is a very good reminder that we did commit to making that last row vacant except for latecomers. So we do need to stick to that better. But we did decide that's a good idea, and we will be trying to stick to that more. I have already passed along the reminder about not referring to residents as you guys in the meeting, and that has been heard loud and clear by the staff. And I think it's a great reminder to ask folks to silence their phones and not have side conversations during the meeting. So we will do that. Thank you for that advice. And the last is, I often trip over unattended walkers at entrances to the main building and in the hallways. Please ask residents not to leave their walkers unattended in public walkways. I will expand that comment to also include power mobility devices, grocery carts, anything that could be an impediment or a fall risk or trip hazard. These are not the kinds of things that we want to have sort of out in the places where people are supposed to be traversing from here and there. So this is just a reminder that please do be mindful of that. Keep your personal items personal and try to keep them out of the space of others so that we can all safely maneuver around the community in a very comfortable fashion. That is all that I have today. And with that, I will see you all next week.